Okay, so the tutorial that we're about to do is going to take you through some steps to create more advanced shapes and use some tools to create more advanced shapes. And again, we're using this for everything, for our logos, for our posters, for even for vector line drawings that you want to create depth, volume, and texture, transparency, and all of that fun stuff. So let's get started. And here are some of the things that we're going to do. And remember, when you're done with each activity, there's always going to be some type of assignment that you need to turn in. And so you want to arrange things nicely on your artboard so that everything kind of looks like it belongs there and it has some nice placement. So you've given it some thought. And so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to go up to File, New, and you're going to title your document Shapes. Or let's see, you already have a shapes practice, so you're going to go practice 2-shapes. And then you're going to just use one artboard today. And then you're going to go ahead and make sure it's inches, and it could be 8 by 5 by 11 inches. And go OK. And you're going to get an artboard like this, okay, in front of you. But I'm just going to go back to this one that we don't want. Nope, I don't want to save that. Thank you very much. Let's go back here. There we go. Okay, so you also want to set up your workspace. So what you want to be able to view, go up to Window. You want to make sure you can view, you don't need to view your artboards there. Go to Window, and you want to make sure that you can see your swatches palette. And I want you to start realizing that attached to your swatches is also brush and symbols. And in the next tutorial, we're going to be looking at brushes and symbols, as well as line segments, because you can do a whole lot of things with line segments. So you want to definitely have your swatches palette available for viewing. So let's see, I can grab that and pull that out a little bit. Whoa, 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 whoa. There we go. I want to get that out of the way for right now. I'll worry about that later. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is go through some basic shapes. And you see you have your rectangle, your rounded rectangle, your ellipse, polygon, star tool, and the flare tool. And let's just review what these do very quickly. Your rectangular tool draws rectangles. Whoops. Wait a minute. You got to select it first. Okay, there we go. Rectangular tool draws rectangles. However, when you hold down the Shift key, it does not draw a rectangle, it draws a square. So it's another way of getting a square. Okay, so you hold the Shift key down and you get a square. Now, watch, because if you hold your Shift key down, you get your square. And if you take your finger off the Shift key first, it comes back to a rectangle. So you want to hold down your Shift key, hold down your mouse, drag out the square, take your finger off the mouse first, then off the Shift key, and it stays a square. Just some small little things that you need to remember, okay? Rounded rectangle tool, when I drag it out, I get a rounded rectangle. When I hold down my Shift key, I get a circle. So that's another way to get a circle with your rounded rectangle. Ellipse tool, again, I drag it out, I have an ellipse. I shift to the circle with the Shift key. I can turn my ellipse into a circle, okay? And then polygon tool, okay, I get my polygons. Click out to the artboard, double click, gives me a little box. I can duplicate it, or I can change the amount of sides. So if I want to only have a polygon with 3 sides, I now have what we call a triangle, okay? What else do we have here? We have a star tool, same thing. Drag it out, get a star, click out into the white space, and I get a dialog box that lets me either repeat it. If I went OK, I'd get another one. Okay, so now I have 2. Or I can go ahead and I can change the amount of stars. not stars, but the amount of points. Okay, I could continue to reproduce those stars just by clicking OK, and it'll duplicate it, or I could go ahead and I can change the number of points on the star. And then finally the flare tool, which is a pretty interesting tool. You drag it out and you get a super cool looking flare. And that's kind of interesting. I like the flare tool. And you can change things about it. You can change the central part of it by moving these around here. With the white arrow tool is what allows you to manipulate the handles and all of these things in the center and change stuff around. So I don't really know if I really would want to do anything with it. I kind of like it the way it is. And so we'll play. You can play around with the flare tool when you have in your time. Okay, but for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to just delete these because this was just a review. And of course, you can always change the fill and the stroke in two places here. Okay, right now there's no stroke and a black fill. Up here it also shows it to you, black fill, no stroke. And you can change the fill and the stroke by going to your color palette or your swatches palette and going ahead and see this whole box is selected. We can now change that to red. If you wanted to put a fill on it, you could change, not the fill, but the stroke. You can change that. If we wanted to change the weight of the stroke, how thick or how thin it is, we can do that up there as well. And we can change things around. So your first assignment that you're going to do for this project is you are going to play around with some shapes, and you're going to get some nice arrangement of shapes. They can be anything that you want. It does not have to be like this. You're going to group some shapes, put some special effects on it, maybe some gradients, and put some text in it. And we're going to start experimenting with the text tool, and here it is, the type tool. And you have a lot of options with the type tool. But for right now, just go ahead and just use this, and if you want to play around with the other options, that's fine. This is a practice, remember. It's going to prepare the ground for you to get into more advanced. You can go ahead and you can put your text right inside here, and it's going to give you a box, and you're going to be able to move it around. That's one way of doing it. And then, hold on a minute. And then you could go ahead and you can get your text tool, and you can make a dialog box here. And then when you bring up the dialog box, all of your different texts are going to show up. So let's pick whatever fonts come with this, and then of course I'm going to show you how you can download different fonts and put them onto, well, we might not be able to do that in the lab, but so for this particular font called Algerian, it's regular. It only comes in regular. It doesn't come in bold. At least we don't have the bold on this computer. And let's go to a different point size, 24 point. You can also just put your cursor right here and change the point size right here. So say you wanted 21 point. You could do that too. And it'll change to 21 point. And we're just going to write the word shapes. Yeah, there it is, shapes. And then you go back to your black selection tool, and we can move it around wherever we want shapes to be. So we say we want it right there, right? And you know, we can go ahead and we can grab our text tool again, and we can make it larger if we want. So pretty basic, nothing fancy about that. Select it. My computer's so slow. We'll wait for it to catch up with us. Just select it with your text tool and go back up, and you can change the size of the text. Here you go. What if we want to make it bigger? Maybe I just want to make it bigger because it won't fit in the box, probably. Let's take it out. There. And now let's select it with our text tool. And let's see if it'll make it bigger. You should be able to vary the size of it. I'm not sure why it's not doing it. All right, we'll worry about that later. Come back to that. Got to make a bigger box, I think. Make a bigger text box. All right, let's not play around with that too much right now. Sometimes my computer is really, like I said, like you've heard me say in all the other tutorials, sometimes my computer can be a real pain. All right, let's go to depth, volume, and scale tool. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab the ellipse tool and we're going to draw a circle. Hold down the shift key. And I want a gradient, so I'm just going to do a basic gray gradient that I prepared prior to this tutorial. Okay, so there's my gray. And what I want is I want my gradient going from dark to light. And so the way I need to do that is I'm going to go over here to my gradient tool. You see this gradient tool. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure my circle is selected, which it is. Go to my gradient tool. And see, my gradient's running horizontally. But I want it to run vertically. So I'm going to see that rounded arrow. I'm going to go ahead and spin it around. I'm going to grab it here and I'm going to put it where I want it. Maybe just a little bit. Maybe straighten it out a little bit. There. Okay. And I now have a gradient that's running from dark to light. Now, I want to put another circle in the center of this, and I'm going to go here to my scale tool. See? And if the scale tool isn't showing, what's hiding behind it? Let's see. Is there anything hiding behind it? There should be. Well, cancel that. Maybe there isn't any tool behind this, but I see a little arrow there, so I don't know. Anyway, double click the scale tool, bring out the dialog box, and your dialog box may say 100%. I want you to scale it down to 80. 80, 80, 80, copy. And there is my smaller circle right in the middle of that. And then what I'm going to do is I want to change the gradient. And I'm going to go ahead and get my gradient tool. Okay. And instead of going from dark to light, I want to reverse it. I want to go from light to dark. And let's see if it will let me grab it. There we go. And put it in there. And so now we get a really cool effect. And we're creating the illusion of depth on a flat surface because we have this light kind of dancing across here. So we have it going from dark to light, and we're creating this light source on this shape, and it looks really cool. It looks like it's beveled. It looks like it's kind of indented in the center. Okay, so let's select that, and let's go ahead and go up to Object, Group, and let's move that over here. And that's your example for your depth, volume, and scale. Let's take a look at another way in which we can create volume or the illusion of a three-dimensional object on a flat surface. And so let's go ahead and get our ellipse tool and let's draw an ellipse here. I want to hold my shift key down so I get a really nice looking ellipse right here. And I'm going to go over to my swatches palette, and I just want to do a black fill on this. So I want my ellipse to have a black fill. Okay? And let me move that over here a little bit so it's kind of here, right here. And then I want to click out into the artboard space so that my circle is no longer selected. And I want to change my fill box, go back to your swatches and change my fill box, and I'm going to change it to white. Okay? So let's go over that. My circle is black, my fill box is white. I'm going to go back and get this mesh tool. See, mesh tool? Mesh tool should be right across from your gradient tool. Mesh tool. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on my circle, and I get a really cool effect with the mesh tool. Now the mesh tool is going to allow you to further create dimension by making your light sources look more realistic. So the gradient looks pretty cool, but it still makes it look flat. So think back to your frog project. You created some really nice gradients, your homemade gradients, you put them into your shapes, the shapes looked great, but they still looked pretty flat. So now if we were to go back and start adding some of the mesh tool, we would get more volume. Let's try it again. Ellipse, hold down the shift key, drag out your shape. Let's go into the swatches and pick any color you like. Let's pick orange this time and click out. Oh, it's going to make me another one. I don't want that. Cancel that. Let me get out of that. Go to the black selection arrow, then click out. Black selection, then click out. Move your shape around a little bit. And then maybe I'm going to change it to a different color this time. So maybe I want to use a darker orange. Oops, my thing's still selected. Hold on. Click out into the white space. Click on the fill. Okay, pick another color. Now I have that. Now let's get my mesh tool right here. Mesh tool. And let's put it in a different place. What happens if I do that? That looks kind of nice. And then what happens if I get my black selection tool, click out, and what if I want to put a little white highlight on that? So now I'm going to get my mesh tool again. And maybe I want my little white highlight to be over here. Oh, that looks pretty cool. And so now I'm really getting some nice realistic looking shapes. I could turn that into an orange by taking a brush stroke and putting some uniform little dots and painting a dot pattern across here and making that look like an orange and putting a little kind of a where the stem was, and I could all of a sudden make this start looking like all kinds of realistic looking objects. Okay, so mesh tool, super cool, really fun, even better than your flat gradient tools. Okay, transparency is next. Let's do some masks. So let's play with the star tool. Let's get the star tool and let's create some stars. Let's go ahead and where are they? Where are they? Come on. Yeah, that's what I want. I need a 5-point star. All right, so let's get this star tool here. And let's get another star tool. Let's click out into the white space. Never mind. Let's just go get the star tool right here. Make a bigger star tool. Okay. And let's make that a different color. How about that color? Now, if I want to see that red star behind the orange star, there's a couple of different things I could do. I could select the orange star and I could change the opacity of it. And by changing the opacity, I now can see the other star through it. Now that really gives you a realistic effect, especially if you're doing, oh my gosh, fabric, clothing, so many different things, windows on buildings, so you want to see inside, behind the window, what's happening inside the building. There's so many different things that you can do with transparency, and there's different ways you can get transparencies as well. Let's go ahead and let's get our rectangular tool and let's draw a box around those stars, and let's turn the box black, and now let's go up to Object, Arrange, Send, I think it's Send Backwards, yeah. So we can see, now we can send backward, we can see one of those stars. The other star was behind the star, so you're not going to be able to see the other star, but you can do something like that, okay, to do that, which isn't quite transparent, but let me go ahead and make another artboard. I can do more transparent stuff with this. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my layers palette. So let me see my layers. And on my layers palette, I can also see my artboards, and the way I can add new artboard, the way I can add new layers, I can add new artboards. So I'm going to actually make a new artboard here, and I'm going to continue with layers on this artboard right here. So let's go back and let's draw any shapes you like. Okay, anything you want to draw, and let's go ahead and make another shape here. Let's get another shape. Let's draw another shape here and turn that black. And then let's go up and select both objects. Here's another way to do a transparency. Let's go up and select both objects and go Object, Clipping Mask, Make. And no, I don't want to do that. Forget the clipping mask. Let's just go Object. Let's see Compound Path. I think that's what we make. That's it. Okay, Compound Path. So then where it's overlapping, it will kind of give you a cutout. So that's actually a cutout now. And so if you were to print that, oh, and I'll show you what I mean. Let me make let's take this and let's make another rectangle in the back, and let's make that black. And then if I send that object backward, you see it's a hole. It's a cutout. So let me try that again so I can show you what I did. I made two shapes. So let's do this, and let's get something different. Let's do a star, and let's make the star white. Oh, crumb. I don't want to do that. I forgot to click out of it. Let's make a star. Let's change this first. Change your fill first. Then get your star. Then draw a little star. How about a couple little stars? There we go. Oh, cute. Okay. And then go up, select everything. Go to Object, Compound Path, Make. And then you're going to go ahead, take another shape over that. Let's turn that shape this color, and then Object, Arrange, Send Backward, and now we have that on top of it. And you can be doing all kinds of really fun things with both transparencies and compound paths as well. So have some fun with that. Go ahead and play around, and when you're done, please upload a project that includes some transparency, some mesh tool, and this was done with the mesh tool as well right here. If I click on it, you can see all the mesh tool paths on there. I took a green ellipse with a gradient in it, and I outlined it in black. I used my scale tool to create another size in the center of it, and then the center part was black, and I took my mesh tool and I added green highlights to the black, and it kind of looks a little bit like a scarab beetle or some kind of beetle right in there. And so you can have some fun using the mesh tool.